Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marilyn Strickland, President and CEO of the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, and it is my honor to welcome you here to our annual meeting today. Let's give the drum line from Lincoln High School a round of applause one more time. We wanted to start this meeting and make sure that we had your attention, and we wanted to let you know that this is about energy, participation, and we're so happy to see so many of you here today. I know that there are a number of elected officials in the crowd, and as a former elected official myself, I first want to thank you for your service, and I'd like you to please stand up so we can acknowledge and appreciate you. So please stand if you're an elected official. I would also like to thank our sponsors who made this event possible today, including our presenting sponsor, Puget Sound Energy. And thanks to each of you for being here today. We are 1,000 strong in this room, which I think is a testament to the strength that we have as a community. So give yourselves a round of applause for being here today. And while this is the 136th annual meeting of the Seattle Metro Chamber, this is my first since taking the helm in February, and it's wonderful to feel the buzz in the room today. Our core mission has not changed. We are your business advocacy organization. And as we start our new program this year, I want to encourage us to use this moment and to think about the year upcoming that is so full of promise. And we want to ignite a spark. We want to ignite the business community's confidence, courage, compassion, commitment, connection, and contribution. One of the Chamber's biggest opportunities in the next year is to do two things: to be visible and to be present. I believe that the Seattle Metro Chamber is poised to be the regional leadership entity that empowers and supports our socially, geographically, culturally, and politically diverse community and cultivates a unified voice. But to get there, we must be bold in our leadership. Because here's the truth: we have no reason at all to apologize for who we are. And let me remind you of who we are. We are employers. We create jobs. The member companies of the Chamber represent 750,000 employees in our region. We are innovators. We have to be to survive. And whether you represent business, government, education, or not-for-profit, the world is changing rapidly right before us. We are pragmatic. We know that we need a transportation system that works. We know that people must have the education and skills that employers are looking for. And we know that people of all income levels must be able to afford to live in our region. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, progressive or conservative, or anything in between. Those are things we should all be able to agree upon. Now, over the past 6 months, I've had the chance to meet with many members and learn about their businesses, as well as how they contribute to the community. And there is so much to be proud of. But we need to do a better job of telling our stories and amplifying our voices. And that's why I'm pleased to announce this fall, we are going to start a podcast to start to share those stories more widely. At the same time, we know that expectations have never been higher for business, and that today, people simply expect us to do more. This past January, Larry Fink, who's the founder, chairman, and CEO of BlackRock, the largest money manager, told CEOs in his annual letter this: "Society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. Companies must benefit all their stakeholders, including employees, customers, shareholders, and the communities in which they operate." And I'm so proud to say that there are examples of that happening right here every single day. There are companies who are leaning into second chance hiring and impact hiring so that people who have barriers to employment can get the skills and a pathway to a decent job. There are philanthropists who are working on projects to build affordable housing and to expand shelter capacity for those who are homeless. And there are companies across this region with thousands of employees who volunteer regularly to improve the quality of life for our most vulnerable residents. So what does a shift in expectations actually mean? It means that we all have a role to play to improve our community, and that is today's theme, the business of doing good. For the Chamber, it means that as an organization, we have to stay true to the fundamentals of who we represent. And I will say it again. First and foremost, we are a business advocacy organization, and we represent employers. And we are dedicated, thank you, let's clap for that. And at the Chamber, we are dedicated to you, our members, and we have market research in the field right now to better understand what's on your minds and what you need from us. So if you received an email from me, and I know you have, about taking a survey, now is your chance to give us candid feedback. And I will resend that link to those of you this afternoon who did not fill out the survey yet. But the Chamber also needs to stay true to our tradition of civic leadership, and there is a deep history. The Chamber actually has had a hand in many things that have been critical to our regional economy. We actually started by winning the mail route to get mail from here to Alaska. We got a railroad to our city back in the first decade of our organization. We played a major role in establishing the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport and later on getting a third runway. We secured a convention center right here in downtown Seattle, and as we all know and feel regularly, it's expanding. We've established Seattle as a home port for cruise ships, which brings $500 million of local revenue to our local economy. So the Chamber has been active, and we continue to lead in our region, and we support investments for transportation, education, including this year's Families Education and Preschool Promise Levy right here in Seattle. We know that preschool is important, and we know that higher education is important, and we are proud as an organization to support the Families in Education and Promise Levy right here in Seattle. Now, how do we build on this tradition to make our region even better? And what do I mean when I say better? We can be more inclusive, for starters. We cannot take this prosperity for granted, and we cannot presume that the myth of bootstraps alone will allow as many people as possible to be part of this booming economy. We must be more coordinated or aligned, and we have to always think forward, think ahead, and think about what the future holds. We know right now that this region is at a pivotal time. We are experiencing growth that we never imagined, and frankly, that we didn't plan for. There are big challenges ahead that will require true regional coordination, collaboration, and we as business must define our role. Because if we don't define our role, the vacuum will be filled and it will be defined for us. There are 3 areas where I think we can make a difference. Inclusion. Now we say to ourselves, it's 2018, but here are some startling statistics. There are still gaps in education and household wealth. For example, for every $100 in wealth a white family has, a black family only holds $5.04. Even college-educated black workers earn about 20% less than their white counterparts. So yes, things have changed, but there is still work to do. And businesses owned by minorities, women, and veterans in Washington state still have challenges getting access to contracts in both the public and private sectors. We can do better. In housing, we have more than 1,000 people moving to King County every week, but our policies have not kept pace, and affordability is declining. And this is not just a Seattle problem. It has a ripple effect, affecting our entire region, from Bellingham to Seattle to Federal Way to Tacoma to Olympia and to Vancouver. In employment, we're anticipating 750,000 job openings between now and 2021. 70% of those jobs will require some kind of post-secondary education. What are we doing to make sure that people who call this place home now will have access to those jobs? Now, as long as I can remember, I have heard people say, we want Seattle and this region to be a world-class city. Well, that day's arrived. But here's the question. Do we have the civic leadership to rise to the occasion and address some of our biggest challenges? I truly believe that the Seattle Metro Chamber of Commerce has the opportunity to be that leader with you, because we are positioned to navigate our region's business community through these challenges. From day one, when I arrived in late February, I have always said, the business community is not government's ATM. But our role, however, is more about what we can do today and look to the future. And to be honest with you, I don't buy this narrative that business growth is responsible for every social problem that we're experiencing in Seattle. Or that we have to punish companies for being successful, or that we have to write blank checks to government. And I say this as someone who has spent a decade in local government. We know that we have a role and we can do better. But I will say this, I do think we have civic leaders who do get it. And I want to applaud Mayor Jenny Durkin for presenting a budget that does not raise taxes and demonstrates fiscal responsibility to use existing funds and to regain public trust. But I also want to take this opportunity to challenge us as a business community and think about how we work together with nonprofits, the public sector, and what plays into our strengths. So, these are ideas, nothing fleshed out, but what if? What if we are ready to acknowledge that even in 2018, the fact that Washington State does not have affirmative action means that some communities are being left behind, because small minority and women-owned businesses have lost out on nearly $3.5 billion in earnings since we banned affirmative action in the late 90s. What if we think of housing as essential infrastructure, like transportation and utilities? What if we as a region, and I don't just mean King County, I mean the 3 or 4 county region, work with HUD in Washington, D.C., and our state legislature, and created a regional housing authority similar to the 3-county district we created for mass transit? What if we treated housing like infrastructure and said to ourselves, how much housing do we need, of what type, for what income level, and let's find a way to lean in and make huge investments in housing. Think how that would change the trajectory for so many people, including many of you who are trying to recruit people to come work here. And can we do better at connecting people with barriers to employment to steady jobs? Together, we can shape a region where every person has the opportunity to be part of this incredible prosperity, and we can build on the success that we have today. So thank you so much for being here. We have a great program. You will hear about our 5 biggest accomplishments from our members and our staff. You'll get a window into what's on the minds of our outgoing and incoming board chair. And we're going to hear from a fresh face in Seattle, our keynote speaker, Francois Looh-Donou, who is the president and CEO of F5 Networks, having joined the company in April 2017, relocating from the East Coast to Seattle. Some of you already know what F5 Networks does, but let me do a quick description. They're a local company that got big. They were founded here in Seattle over 20 years ago, and now they have over 4,500 employees in 36 countries around the world and $2 billion in revenue. We want our local companies to grow and be successful, and this is a great example of one that has done just that. In the short time that Francois has been at F5, he's galvanized the company with a strategic focus on expertise in cloud computing and security, and we're going to be thrilled to hear from him later on today. So let's keep this program moving. I've been up here for a really long time, probably the longest welcome in the history of the Chamber. And I just want to remind us, we the Chamber are so incredibly proud to be your business advocacy organization. And we have a chance to be the organization that shows civic regional leadership. Let's be visible, let's be present, and let's be bold. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Chamber members Jaebadiah Gardner, Robyn Corr, John Wenstrup, Taylor Hoang, and Chamber Chief of Staff Markam McIntyre.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jaebadiah Gardner, the founder and CEO of GardnerGlobal, And I am one of the small businesses chasing that $3 billion gap that Marilyn was talking about. First of all, I want to let you know that I am on the Executive Committee and Board of Trustees and also serve on the Small Business Committee for the Chamber. We have 2,200 members that are a part of the Chamber. And I have a quick question the staff and board members cannot answer. What percentage do you think of that comprises of small business? Come on, throw out a number. Okay, come on. Come on, I know it's afternoon, we got business, but how many? How many? Close. 80% of that 2,200 are small business owners. That's over 1,700 small business owners. That is incredible. So with that, I want to talk about our first big win of the year, which was we launched the Elevate Northwest Conference. And if you weren't there, you should have been there. But it brought together 300 people at its first inaugural run this year, and we talked about best practices, interconnectivity between big businesses, small businesses, and how we can grow innovatively together. So next year, I want to make sure that we have more than 300 people there. So for all you millennials, it's time to step our game up and get to the table because there's tremendous opportunity. And with that said, thank you very much.
I'm Robyn Corr from Nintendo, one of the Chamber's newest members. We joined the Chamber for employee development and networking opportunities and to support the business community. And I'm going to talk about the second biggest win from the past year, which is growing the membership to over 2,400 employers. That's the highest since the Great Recession. Altogether, that's 750,000 employees. Now, whether you've been a Chamber member since the beginning or like us, you're just getting started, together our voices are stronger. From one-person shops to employers who employ tens of thousands, together we are stronger. And it's so wonderful to be part of a Chamber who can represent us in this very vibrant area.
Hello, I'm John Wenstrup, a senior partner at the Boston Consulting Group, BCG. I'm a member of the board of the Chamber and had the distinct privilege of serving with Heather Redman as the co-chair of the CEO Search Committee earlier this year. The search committee looked at over 50 candidates from across the United States, across private sector, public sector, and nonprofits in searching for its new CEO, which leads us to our third win for the Chamber over the last year, which was landing Marilyn Strickland. Now, many of you and many people across the region who aren't here know Marilyn as a dynamic, collaborative leader and a passionate advocate for jobs and economic development. But I would make a bigger point, and that is those of you who know her well probably know a bit about her courage. And take any topic, whether it's the launch of the Regional Economic Development Organization, Greater Seattle Partners, the head tax, which she grabbed by the horns as soon as she took the role. She is fearless. Now, it may not be courageous to stand up in this room and say that business can be a force for good, but it is courageous to do that in this city at this time in our history. Marilyn was a fantastic elected leader. She raised the bar of leadership as the mayor of Tacoma, and we are very, very lucky to have her come join us here at the Chamber in her next step of her career. She's focused, she's sharp, she's a force of nature, and I cannot wait to work with her for the next year, and I hope you all share that sentiment.
My name is Taylor Hoang, and I'm the owner of Siglo Cafe and also the executive director of the Ethnic Business Coalition. I also serve on the Chamber board and have been a board member for many years, and also the executive board. And today I want to share with you our biggest win, I think, of the year, which is the repeal of the head tax. Yes, applaud away. We were very successful in galvanizing the business community, both large business as well as small business, and the public, to really demand accountability and successfully repealed the head tax. And we asked tough questions. We asked the council on how they are using the resources that they already had. and not to demand more from the business community. And by May, many people in the city became aware of the issues and became aware of all the different element of what entailed with the head tax. And we demanded the city, within 6 months of that, we able, with Maryland's help, repeal the head tax. And so with that success, you can feel the change and the tide in Seattle about their attitude towards business and also the public. So we ask you to help us keep the momentum going and demand accountability from City Council and for them to be responsible for putting common sense before and accountability before ideology. Thank you.
I'm Markam McIntyre. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Seattle Metro Chamber, as well as the Executive Director of CASE, which is the Chamber's political operation. Elections matter, and CASE plays a big role in those elections by supporting candidates who want to advocate for a strong and healthy business community here in Seattle, but across the region in whole. And I'm proud to say that CASE played a huge part in last year's mayoral election. We endorsed and supported a candidate who brought leadership experience and a broad coalition of support from business and labor, and who actively sought a partnership with business to help solve some of our community's toughest challenges. We mobilized significant resources to help voters make an informed choice, and they selected our endorsed candidate by a healthy margin, who's now Mayor Jenny Durkin. We have another big opportunity coming up in 2019 when all 7 district council seats in the city of Seattle are going to be up for re-election. I'll say it again, elections matter. CASE has proven that it's an effective political voice for the business community, but we need your help and your support to help elect the smart, effective, pragmatic leadership this city deserves. Thank you.
And now, please welcome outgoing board chair Heather Redman and incoming chair Frank Foti.
They turned on our mics.
Yep.
This is always dangerous. Wow, what a year. I have to say that can't see Marilyn now beyond the plexiglass, but big crowning accomplishment for me in getting her on board. And thank you, John, for giving such a great summary of why we love Marilyn. Yeah, she's great. So I'm Heather Redman. I'm the managing partner of Flying Fish Partners. We're a VC here in town, and I've had the pleasure of chairing the chamber for the last year.
And I'm Frank Foti, CEO of Vigor Industrial, and happy to be succeeding Heather and taking the reins partially following Marilyn.
Yes, yes, we all work for Marilyn.
There you go.
So Frank, tell us a little bit about yourself. This is your chance to get everyone oriented as to who you are.
Okay. Well, I'm an Italian descent guy from Cleveland, Ohio. Worked, there you go, Cleveland. Yes. Okay. Seattle. Yes. Okay. Got a business degree from Miami of Ohio. Worked in telecommunications for Comcast for many years. While I was pursuing my career there, my father got terminal cancer, owned a small construction company. I left my career, went home to manage a family business, then returned out here. During the time that I was running his business, after he had passed, I fell back in love with the artisans that build things, that speak with their hands and are visual learners. And it was this great experience. It was an awesome experience in large part because of how clear people communicate when words are not their stock in trade. And I learned a lot about kind of clean truth and lack of politics from people who build buildings. So eventually I moved back here and acquired a struggling business in Portland, Oregon that was in ship repair. I am a dead-end job. I've been in the same job since 1995 as CEO of the company. Looking to ascend, but you know, haven't quite got there, but we've grown the business quite a bit from 40 people to a little over 2,000. Over the course of that time, we bought Todd Shipyards here at Harbor Island and also a great company in Ballard by the name of Keynote Marine Industries. Once we put all those pieces together, I made Seattle my home, and there it is.
So Frank had the misfortune of living one floor above me in our condo building, so he really couldn't escape when we were trying to get him to take on this job.
That's great. So Heather, if I can, I want to turn the question back to you, which is what experiences in your background made you interested in leading the chamber?
Yeah, so I gave this little spiel last year, so I won't go into it in a lot of detail, but my sort of catchphrase that some people always are like, what? Is that I was raised in communes in California and then in very rural Oregon, and so of course went to Stanford Law School and have ended up being a venture capitalist. So, typical pathway. So I always say if you want your kids to be venture capitalists, put them in, socialist environments for a while. So probably Seattle will have a lot of venture capital in about 20 years. So my big takeaway from my upbringing is really that I get along with everybody. I mean, I think that we all share more in common than we understand, and so I grew up with loggers and communists and have now dealt in the corporate world for many years, and I think we all have a lot in common. And the thing that I like to think about this region, and the reason that I was so excited about the opportunity to lead the chamber, is that I really believe that this is a town and a region of founded companies, founders who are still in place, like Frank. Frank's a great example of this, where we do have shared values. And if you talk to somebody who is working in an entry-level job and you talk to a Frank Foti, the continuity of values between those two people, I think, is really remarkable and really perhaps unique in the world in terms of how close it is. So, I've viewed the opportunity at the Chamber to really take that foundation of shared values and shared vision and really see what we could do with it. And I do share that aspiration that Marilyn mentioned of being a world-class city. But I'm even a little bit more extreme in my view. I feel like we've got all the ingredients here and actually the obligation, because we have all those ingredients, to be a leader around the world in showing what a business community can be and showing what a community can be, because we do have these deeply held shared values to fall back on. So it's been a great experience to see that play out, and I feel like we're just sort of at the beginning of the rise in the hill, and that with Frank and Marilyn's leadership and the rest of the team and all of you here, we'll really see the Chamber even bring that more to the fore in the next couple of years.
Okay, so there have been some really major wins this year for the Chamber. What were the highlights for you, and where do you see momentum?
So Frank and I were joking that everybody else has already said what we were going to say. So, but let me echo some of that stuff because I think it's really important. So when we were looking for a new CEO of the Chamber, the big thing that we were talking about was voice. And I think that we have achieved that in a really grand scale with Marilyn. I mean, we have been able to have the business voice, I think for the first time in a long time, really be heard by the whole community. And we cannot take credit as the Chamber for the repeal of the head tax. It was a lot of grassroots efforts, as we all know. But I think Marilyn was able to get the message with the help of many of you to really start explaining the business story about why job creation is so important and why taking care of business and business environment is so crucial to the overall success of a community. And I do really believe, as Taylor mentioned, that we've laid the groundwork for a shift in perception of the business community, which was our #1 goal in thinking about what a new CEO could bring to the table. So that's been huge. We also have continued to broaden our representation. We had a big focus on being a regional chamber. Business and communities do not respect political geographic boundaries, so the idea that Seattle is its own little thing and it's not part of some larger region makes no sense. So for the Chamber, it's really important for us to think about this entire economic region and community region as one entity. And so we've put a lot of effort into amping up our presence in the south and the north, on the east side in particular. We did a trip, we did a trip to Singapore, we did a trip to Bellevue. We treated that trip to Bellevue as being as significant significant as a trip to Singapore. We have a lot to learn, and we have a lot to do to build relationships across the lake and to continue to strengthen that. We also, as was mentioned by Jaebadiah, have doubled down on our emphasis of small business. 80% of our membership is a small business, and we believe that that's all part of this larger ecosystem. If our big businesses are doing well, our small businesses do well. If our small businesses do well, our communities do well. So we're all part of one ecosystem, and we at the Chamber really recognize that. And then finally, our own composition. I mean, I think if you look at our team and you look at our board, look at our leadership, we have a very diverse, representative chamber now, much more diversity on gender and race than we've ever had before. We're proud of that, and we're going to continue to emphasize that going forward. Finally, we have been doing a lot of events. Elevate Northwest. And the next event that we hope you are all thinking about attending is the RLC, or the Regional Leadership Conference, which really pulls together diversity in terms of business thinkers and policy thinkers all into one room, because none of us exist in silos, and we're very interdependent in how we can be successful as a region. So it's been a great year, super proud of what the team has accomplished. I've just been there to sort of be the cheerleader.
Thanks.
So, Frank, can you talk a little bit about what excites you in taking on this role? Okay. Not what scares you, just what excites you. Yeah.
Well, because I am very fear-driven, but what really, what excites me besides working with a leader like Marilyn and the amazing staff that we have at the Chamber, I really want to start there. And I realize you hear the courteous, hey, Marilyn's doing a great job, but if you're in our executive committee and you talk with staff and you get to experience what she's doing, she's a tremendous force and has changed the energy in a very positive way for where we're going. So I'm excited about that. That makes constructive progress. You can see it. So besides that, you know, the theme of the business of doing good is really central to how we roll where I work anyway. And it's true, and so many businesses are conscious and think of the world this way. And for us to affirm that that theme exists and lace it through everything that we do is a very exciting thing. You know, leading Vigor and being part of a really vibrant and awesome maritime community here in the Seattle area, I get to see firsthand how lives are changed on a day-to-day basis, and where you can make a profit and make a difference for people at the same time. Not to focus totally on Vigor, but a couple of things that we do that resonate to that. We talk about low unemployment, but we don't talk about underemployment or people who need second or third or fourth chances. We have a public-private partnership with South Seattle College that is generating welders, pipe fitters, riggers who are going to work not only for Vigor, but lots of other companies in the area. We've got a bunch of work going with the State Department of Corrections to train people and bring them into the workforce. We celebrated in Bainbridge Island Saturday, our latest ferry, the Suquamish, and happened to be walking on board with a couple of our key workers who are totally grateful for the jobs they have. One, a 30-year sober person, another one 5 years sober. These are open conversations where I get to work, and to have that positive energy of people grateful for what they do can be repeated, and when an environment is positive that way, it starts to feed on itself. So this isn't just about Vigor. There are so many companies in this room that do way more of this than we do. Starbucks, Amazon, Microsoft. Actually, I want to name another one. Dick's Drive-In has been helping young people learn how to hold down a job and give them basic building blocks for a future career for years and years and years here. And you know, we could name almost everybody here in that sense. You know, there's so much good going on that we don't hear about, and you can rely on us to do a lot more storytelling with you about what you do that is a force for good. So I'm gonna go back to you here.
I think this
So-
is when you asked me for the piece of advice.
Yeah.
He's avoiding this.
Yeah,
He
I am
doesn't
avoiding
want
it
my
because
advice.
I know what's
I
coming,
told
but
him this
okay.
was going to be like a surprise piece of advice. So,
Okay, go ahead.
are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the flip side of what Frank was just talking about, we did not plan this, but one of the things that I really admire about Frank is that he brings this sense of vulnerability and transparency. So I was at a breakfast this morning for WSU, and I'm a new regent there, go Cougs. Yeah, okay, good. It was Zillow, Mod Pizza, and Alaska were the companies that were presenting this morning, and they were talking about transparency and vulnerability, and I realized, vulnerability is Frank's superpower. I mean, he is really good at wearing his heart on his sleeve, at being able to be open so that people can be open back to him, which I think is one of the things that he just explained with some of his workers and why that works so well for the company and has given them such strength. And we're talking about all the good that companies are doing for the community, but one of the things that I think we've been missing in the conversation, and I think you are the guy to deliver this, is being able to tell the story authentically of how vulnerable business is. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, so I'm always thinking winter is coming, and we're at the top of the cycle right now, and the day will come when we will not be at the top of the cycle, and we will be looking at our employers and worrying about their ability to continue to make payroll, to continue to grow, to continue to supply these great jobs that people who may need a second or a third chance rely on. And I think that's the story that maybe we have been missing in the public dialogue that I think Frank and Marilyn can bring out, is not only are companies doing good every day, particularly in these boom times, but we also have a need to be taken care of ourselves, and we need to be nurtured by the communities that we exist in. So when I think about Frank starting this business from nothing and buying other distressed businesses, he knows what it takes to make payroll, to be nervous about that, to try to find room to invest in the next technology. And that is the story that I think that the Chamber needs to bring to the fore as we go into this next cycle. It's, the other thing that they mentioned at WSU this morning was that being a purpose-driven business is table stakes. And what I think Marilyn and Frank can really bring to the table is, okay, so we have all of these purpose-driven businesses that are doing good and creating companies built to last, but how do we, in the next sort of cycle, provide a business community that is purpose-driven? And how do we come together to all work together to do the next bit of work, whatever that is? So I think that's your superpower, your strength is that vulnerability piece. And so telling the story of all the good we're doing, but also telling the story of how we also need caregiving and nurturing to continue to be able to do that good work. I think we're getting the wrap it up message.
Yeah, we're getting the wrap it up message.
Thank you all. What a great
103.
opportunity.
Thank you. Take care.
Please welcome to the stage Andy Wappler, Vice President of Puget Sound Energy.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure for Puget Sound Energy to be your presenting sponsor here today. It's wonderful to be in the room with so many great people, including, of course, Frank, Heather, and Marilyn, and all these great businesses that are here, many of whom are our customers or our partners, and we appreciate the work, too, of the many elected officials who are in the room. All of us together help make this a great community. Our keynote speaker today, Francois Looh-Donou, will talk a bit about how to make that a great community for everyone. And I think that's a wonderful message in a time that can feel very divisive in our headlines. How do we bring people together so they can all enjoy so much great prosperity that we have? Now, Marilyn mentioned a few facts about F5, and I frankly didn't know much about F5. Years ago, I live in Redmond, I'd see this guy with this cool yellow Porsche, and it said F5 on the license plate, and I thought, ooh, that'd be a nice place to work. That's a good ride. Well, I knew they were a technology company, but I didn't know much about them. So it was wonderful in talking to Francois and one of his board members, kind of talking about how, in a way, they're kind of like your humble electric and gas utility. They are the people in the background who make the things happen that we love. So for F5, they're kind of that utility in the background that makes all those apps and other things you love, it makes them work. That's super important. And we are launching a new customer website on Monday, so I will be calling Francois for help if it doesn't go right, and I'm glad I now have his number. Well, our conversation today won't be about technology per se, but more on what all of us can do to make this great region continue to be great. And I know this room is filled with people who share that value. On our part, you may have heard over this last year, PSE has committed to reducing our carbon impact 50% because we know that's important to all of us in so many different ways. Francois joined F5 last year after a long career in tech and telecom in the US and Europe. He attended many fine universities in France that I cannot pronounce. He also went to Stanford, I can say that. And while I'm sure we'll hear a bit about tech, what we'll really hear about is how to make this world work for all of us so we can enjoy prosperity and progress together. His story spans everywhere from Togo to France to now the Puget Sound, and that gives him, I think, a really unique perspective. And one hint on that unique, you may hear him use the word cashew during today's presentation. Please join me in giving a warm Seattle welcome to our keynote speaker for the 136th Annual Chamber Meeting, F5 Network CEO and President Francois Looh-Donou.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Andy. Marilyn, thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm not going to spend our time together today attempting to convince you of the value of doing good. One of the great things about Seattle and everything I've heard this morning is I believe you know all that. You do all that. Today, I want to talk about something that's far more personal. Something that I believe is fundamental to the value of doing good. Something that touches every one of the people we work with. An individual's worth. I simply believe it is within human design to be seen as worthy. I believe every human being has stories to tell, value to add, and a well of potential to be realized. For us to thrive as human beings, we need to exercise our worth. We need to feel valued and capable of achievement. I know it sounds incredibly simple, being seen as worthy. But it isn't simple. For very many of the people that I grew up with, and many of the people I have worked with, I have seen their worth be diminished or destroyed by bias, lack of opportunity, or lack of support, robbing these individuals of their potential, threatening their prosperity. For many people, I've seen this happen very early in life. But I've also seen it happen with adults right here, right now, in our own businesses. You see, many of the people we work with every day in our companies, amongst our customers, amongst our partners, operate in groups where they are always a minority, where they have to accept biases that marginalize them every single day. These adversities over time degrade a person's sense of worth. Today, I want to share with you what I have learned about the power of human worth and how we, as leaders can unleash this power on a large scale and achieve not just results, but lasting impact. It is not something that requires millions of dollars in philanthropy. It isn't something that requires converting your business to a nonprofit. It's a much simpler formula that has come from my life, experiencing two extremes. On the one hand, growing up in Africa and later returning to my country to do some work in agriculture, where people make $3 per day. And in a parallel life, working here in the Western world, in technology, where people can make $1,000 per day. I have been fascinated to find that be it in rural Africa or the global centers of technology, when a person's worth is valued and celebrated, they become the best they can be. And doing good gets done. I spent a lot of time observing leaders unleashing this human worth in these two completely different environments. And the French engineer in me couldn't help but want to codify their work so that I could replicate it. And here's what I've learned. I've learned that the common denominator to unleashing this human worth is reach. It's about starting with yourself, of course, but constantly seeking to reach more and more people. And I've come to believe there are 3 stages of reach, of unleashing worth. The first stage is what I call giving as a leader. It's knowing and behaving that with every interaction you have at any level in an organization, you have an opportunity to enhance the sense of worth in others by being accessible, by being generous with your time, your advice, your coaching, by celebrating victories large and small, by valuing every contribution. You demonstrate your commitment to the worth of the people you touch. This is a choice you make as a leader every day, and it's free. The second stage of reach I have found is creating inclusion. If you work in a large organization, you are not reasonably going to touch everyone in your company. But you can impact everybody's sense of worth if you create an inclusive environment. By that I mean a place where everyone, regardless of their background, feel that they can be themselves, that they don't have to suppress a part of their identity or cover a part of their identity to be successful. It's about the policies you put in place. It's about the cultural standards you set. It's about what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate. It's about how you characterize your company. Beyond the walls of an organization, you can extend worth into the third stage of reach by clarifying purpose. Defining why your organization is a force of social good beyond the numbers. Depending on your industry or community, this could be about social justice. It could be about economic development. It could be about the environment. It could be about anything, but it's about defining why your organization is a force of social good. Now, let me share with you where I've seen this in practice. And I want to start with the Western world in technology, where I spent the last 20 years of my career. I mentioned giving as a leader as the first stage of reach. I believe we as leaders often underestimate one of the most powerful tools we have: words. Words matter. Words have the potential to change how a person experiences their own worth. I first experienced this phenomenon at the age of 26. I had just joined a company called Ciena, which is a global telecoms equipment company based in Maryland. The young, nervous, and eager guy who looks like he's about ready to salute on this picture is me. I was constantly questioning my worth. I had applied for this job at Ciena as a sales engineer, and despite my background not being ideal for the role, I got the job. But when I started, I felt out of place. I didn't have the requisite experience. I didn't know their technologies. And I was always trying to compensate, working 80 hours per week, studying all their technologies at night, but constantly fearing that I was about to be found out and fired. Within 4 months of my time there, their vice president of international sales, his name is Gary Smith. I'll never forget his name to this day. I call him my second father. He approached me at a social event and said, "Francois, we need to clone you." It was 30 seconds, but my world stopped. I was an immigrant in a foreign country. Young guy, funny name, funny accent, total outsider. But for the first time, I felt worthy. It was as though he had popped 2 batteries in my back to get me going, and it lasted 18 years. The impact of his words on me were profound and permanent. They unleashed new aspirations, new horizons I would have never dreamt of without his belief. Words matter. Now, beyond being generous as a leader, how do you scale worth in an organization when you're just one person? Well, I have studied the matter, and I can tell you definitively, I believe the only way to do this effectively is to create a truly inclusive environment. That is why at F5, I have placed so much emphasis on inclusion. So much so that we have made creating a more diverse and inclusive F5 one of the 5 core behaviors that we ask of every one of our employees. We want to create and nurture a culture where every F5er, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, background, where every F5er feels they can be themselves and be successful. To accelerate that journey, we've put a number of programs in place that address diversity, gender equality, unconscious biases. And I am already seeing the benefits of doing this. In the last few months, we have doubled the number of female VPs in our company. We have reversed thank you. Thank you. We had a valued employee that was about to leave, and we were able to reverse her decision. We've hired a leader that's dedicated to diversity and giving. And we have made some tough calls. Because I have learned the hard way that you are not going to create an inclusive environment unless you make it very visible what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Too many times, inaction signals that damaging behaviors are acceptable. And at F5, we are in no way perfect on this dimension. But we are committed to the journey. Which leads me to the third stage of reach, where the biggest impact comes, extending worth beyond the walls of your organization. I believe you do that by driving clarity of purpose. At F5, we believe our worth does not reside solely in our balance sheet. It resides in the people we work with, the communities we serve. We have just created a foundation, the F5 Foundation. I'm actually discussing it here publicly for the first time. The F5 Foundation will focus on two causes that reflect the communities we serve and the passions of our employees. First, on a global basis, we are going to work with partners to enable more people, more individuals from underrepresented groups, women and minorities, to enter careers in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. This is not only good in the long run for our business, but it reflects the aspirations of our employees to do good. We also want to act locally. And we've chosen to focus our resources and volunteering on helping resolve homelessness here in Seattle. I know many of you know here the situation in our city has reached crisis levels. And as F5ers, we believe we can do more to help our fellow Seattleites regain one of the most basic needs that defines their sense of worth: a home. Now, I've mentioned that these three stages of unleashing worth, that I had seen them not just in technology, but also in Africa. And so let me now take you to my home country, Togo. Togo is one of the smallest countries in Africa, spans only 22,000 square miles, but home to about 8 million people. Togo is also one of the African countries that produces every year thousands of tons of raw cashew nuts. So there you go, Andy. We're fully into the cashews, as advertised. Until recently, 100% of this raw cashew production was exported to Asia for processing and then sold on to US and European food retailers for consumption. The tragedy for our country is that 100% of that production could be processed locally with some basic training and some investment, creating thousands of jobs in a country that desperately needs those jobs. And so about 14 years ago, I joined up with a friend of mine who lives in Togo and shares my passion for social enterprise. And we created the first cashew processing factories in Togo. We called our company Cashew Espoir, which translated to English means cashews of hope. We now employ about 800 people, mainly women, in the north of Togo. Thank you. Our employees make on average $3 to $5 per day. Before joining and enrolling in our factories, typically they were living on less than $1 per day, either collecting wood in the bush or living on subsistence farming. I visit our factories every 6 months. And over time, I've observed that the most powerful leaders in our company aren't actually the managers with formal responsibility or authority. They are those who are most naturally giving. My favorite example of such a leader is the woman you see in this picture. Her name is Akwameba. She's a sheller. Her job is to break these cashew nuts open, which is the first stage in our process. She's actually one of the best shellers on the floor, breaking about twice as many kilos per day as our average employees, who are mostly men. But that is not the most striking part of her story. Akwameba lived in a village that was 60 miles away from our factory. And she had heard about Cashew Espoir, and she wanted to find work. But it took her 18 months to save the $10 she needed to make the trip from her village to our factory just to apply for the job. When she got there, she faced more adversity. She was born with poor vision. And as a result, we couldn't give her a job in the peeling section, which is where we traditionally have women do the work. Her worth collided with lack of financial means and bias, a perceived lack of ability. But she insisted, after making that long trip, on getting a job at Cashew Espoir as a sheller, a job that is typically done by men because of its physical demands. When she was given that opportunity, something amazing happened. Her natural talents, her natural work ethics, her natural giving nature began to shine. Her worth began to shine. And in the 2 years she's been with us, she has become one of the most sought-after leaders in our factory, giving advice, coaching others, providing words of wisdom. She told me last year that her favorite moment of the year was when women she had helped had received awards for best performance. She exemplifies to me giving as a leader. Now, creating inclusion in a factory environment in rural Togo meant creating conditions that would allow more women to find work. To do that, we built a nursery on site, which allowed young mothers to join us and have their babies or toddlers taken care of at the factory. Thank you. We changed the working hours to finish at 4 p.m. so that women would not have to walk home alone in the dark after work. And we changed the lighting in our factories so that older women with poorer vision could actually come and work in our peeling sections. And as these changes took hold, we saw more women join us. The quality of our product improved dramatically. But more importantly, I saw that this wasn't just a job for these women. I saw that they actually regained their own sense of worth and pride. I'm always curious when I'm in Togo to speak with our employees and try to understand, what do they do with the money? What do they do when they go from living on less than $20 a month to making $60 or $80 per month? And in speaking with them, I have been humbled fascinated to find out that many of our employees end up giving away almost half of their income to extended families who live far away and have no means of supporting themselves. To many of us, you would think they live in poverty, but they feel prosperous, and their first desire is to share that prosperity with others. As we saw the impact on our workers, my partner Maurice and I, we couldn't help but feel we wanted to extend our purpose beyond the company walls. We wanted Cajou Espoir to be not just a factory, but an engine of economic development in the region, an engine of poverty reduction. And so we thought about some community projects that we could do. And when we approached our employees with these ideas, they were initially very skeptical, frankly feeling that if there was any profit left at the end of all this, it should only go to increasing their salaries, understandably so. But we spent an inordinate amount of time with them clarifying our purpose, making sure they understood we wanted to stand for a bigger mission around economic development in our country. And ultimately, they bought in. These workers making $80 per month actually felt immensely proud that the fruits of their labor would go to improving the lives of others in their communities. So much so that they chose the projects and what they wanted us to do to contribute to worth in the community. They first advised us, and we went to the local school and financed some benches so that pupils would not have to sit in the floor during class. We then built a medical facility and recruited a doctor so that the people of our town would not have to walk 8 miles to be able to see a doctor. And more recently, we brought electricity to a nearby village so that these young boys and girls you see here would be able to read and do their homework after dark. I have never seen our employees at Cajou Espoir more proud than the day we first turned on the light in this village. They speak about these feats with pride. They speak about Cajou Espoir as a place where they're seen and where their work makes a difference. Now, if you embrace the idea that our role as leaders is to enhance the sense of worth in others, in ways large or small, I believe you can have a lasting impact. Your journey becomes being more generous as leaders, always creating inclusion, and extending worth into the community by defining and living your company's purpose. The theme of today is the business of doing good. I don't believe that the business of doing good is a corporate responsibility thing. It isn't a race thing. It isn't a religion thing. To me, the business of doing good is a human thing. You know, I hear a lot from our employees, our partners, sometimes in discussions with our customers, that the societal problems we face today, for instance, in our communities faced with Black Lives Matter, our companies grappling with Me Too, that these societal problems are too big and too complex for a single organization. I disagree. I believe a world of change can happen from within a single organization. I believe we can all respond to and relate to the worth of each individual. It is fundamentally personal. In 2007, there's a French writer and environmentalist called Pierre Rabhi. He started a movement he called Colibri. Colibri, translated to English, is a hummingbird. As the story goes, a devastating forest fire was destroying the landscape, and all animals were watching helplessly. At some point, a hummingbird emerged. It started going back and forth to the river, collecting water and dropping small droplets of water on this fire. After a while, one of the animals shouted at this hummingbird, "What are you doing? You're not making a difference. You are wasting your time." To which the hummingbird responded, without hesitation, "I am only doing my part." And that is my aspiration for all of us, to celebrate worth in our own way and be hummingbirds in the business of doing good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francois, for your inspiring speech and helping us remember that each individual is involved in the business of doing good. I want to thank each of our speakers today, Frank, Heather, Jaebadiah, Robyn, Taylor, and Markam. I also want to thank our presenting sponsor, Puget Sound Energy, and to the many sponsors who made today possible. I want to thank our servers who served us our lunch and will clean tables for us afterwards. And I especially want to thank the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce staff for the work that you did to put this event together. Would you please stand so that we can recognize you? We have a fantastic year ahead of us. I hope this luncheon was inspirational. The business of doing good is good business, and it starts with each and every one of us. On behalf of the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much for being here for our 136th annual meeting. Have a great afternoon, and we will see you here next year.